KTRE Sports Director Ryan Smith, who was in NAC as the Dragons hosted Lufkin and got their first win. Ryan, what'd you take away from that Lufkin win tonight, buddy?
Yeah, I mean, it was impressive, and it's, kind of been the trend between these two teams. It's the battle for Evangelina River, and Lufkin has dominated since 2000, really since before that, but I'm taking it back to 2000 for statistical purposes. They're 19-2 since 2000. Lufkin is against Nacogdoches, and it looked the same exact way here tonight. Early, I know on the highlights you saw the opening kickoff get returned by Caleb Barraza all the way down to the 23-yard line. I said 22, it was the 23 actually. Still 1 yard difference. Doesn't really matter. They ended up getting into the end zone there on that first drive. Great play. Javion Johnson finding running back and putting some moves on. Putting some moves on him there into the end zone. But like I said, this has just been, kind of the norm between Lufkin and Nacogdoches on the football field. Last year they pitched a shutout. Not quite that to this point, but still Lufkin getting that first win for Coach Absek, and I know that's going to be really exciting, especially coming back home next week for the first time.
Well, I tell you what, they had a big test last week against Longview on the road, and we, of course, as you know, we had the access, and he's letting them guys know, hey, you worked all week to kind of redeem yourself from last week, and they did not miss a beat. They looked like, hey, last year we were pretty good. We can still build off this year despite what happened last week. I see a team that appears to be on a mission and that played with lots of confidence tonight. Is that what we saw?
Oh, without a doubt. And I think, like I said, it goes back to that opening kickoff. Obviously, you return it all the way down inside the 25-yard line, not quite to that red zone, but almost there. They did get into the red zone and then score a touchdown. And then on top of that as well, on their next drive, they shut down this NAC offense, force a punt. Punter, he muffs the punt at first, can't get a hold of it, gets hit in the end zone, ball falls down, and it gets recovered in the end zone by Lufkin, So, a couple of special teams plays, they call it a masterclass a lot of times from some of these quarterbacks in the NFL and the college whenever they put on these spectacular, performances. It was a masterclass from the Lufkin special teams and a little bit of a disaster class for NAC. But the one thing I will say, Coleman, is that this quarterback for Nacogdoches, he's a freshman kid, Jalen Garrett. He's going to be a monster in a couple of years. I was talking with Coach House earlier this week, and he was raving about him. And, you don't necessarily want to start a true freshman just a freshman. We're not in college yet. Just a freshman. You don't necessarily want to start a freshman on varsity in his first year, but in this case, he looked really good. He had some, freshman mistakes, a couple of balls that could have been picked but weren't, and he had some really great throws, looked really good on the move. He's going to be a problem in a couple of years, and it showed on the field. He had a bunch of flashes tonight. I was really impressed with the way that he looked.
And based off what you said, based off what you're telling me is he's a freshman, but he's been thrown into the fire, so to speak, but he's also at the same time developing. So for him, next year, if not next year, the following year, he will be seasoned and will be one of those guys who learned while in the trenches, and he'll learn to know what's expected of him. Real quick, does Lufkin have a number of seniors on their team? Are they a young team or just a middle team? What do you know their makeup?
I mean, they graduated a lot of guys last year. Two of those, key guys that we've been talking about. Evan Young, he's up in Michigan State right now, played safety, and then of course Zion Williams out in Baton Rouge, freshman D-line for LSU. But there's still a pretty good amount of seniors. A lot of guys in that backfield. Javion Johnson, like we've talked about a little bit, the quarterback, and then Kenneth Waters. Next to him, a couple of seniors on that team. So it's with Lufkin. I think you heard it, earlier today whenever we had it on the 6th during the Lufkin NAC preview. Coach House talked about, Lufkin's Lufkin, and I know Coach King talked about that last week. Lufkin's Lufkin, and obviously hoping that everything goes well with him. Obviously prayers are with Coach King, of course. But
yes.
Lufkin's Lufkin. We've heard that all throughout these past 2 weeks. They don't necessarily rebuild, they reload. And with all the talent around there, it's pretty consistent. You're going to have these upperclassmen and things like that be able to maybe sit in the wings for a year or two and then be able to, come out whenever their bodies are a little bit better built for the varsity level, especially when you're at that 5A, Division I level, which is, right next to 6A. So it's definitely, senior and junior heavy, but there's a lot of, guys that are on that there's plenty of guys that are, underclassmen, those freshmen and sophomores who are making impacts here early.
Before I let you go, talk about the crowd. Is a rivalry there? Talk about the crowd on both sides of the stadium.
Oh, I thought it looked great on both sides, honestly. I mean, there's this little middle section. I've noticed this in a couple of stadiums that are fairly empty, and I think that's by design. I don't know why it's like that. I couldn't tell you for the world, because all around them it was, the way that, and this was on the Nacogdoches side, it was, you had two, both sides. You had one far side was the student section, and then short side was, for parents and people who were going to watch the game. And both of those were full from bottom to top. And then you get to that little middle section, it looked like it was, locked off and things like that from some of the other people, and I'm not really sure why it's like that, but honestly, the crowds look great on both sides. You could definitely hear Lufkin playing a little bit more, but you definitely saw some stuff from Nacogdoches as well. They scored a touchdown near the end of half. Once again, talking about Garrett, he was really good in spots, and obviously had his freshman moments as well. Threw a nice touchdown pass pretty much to end half for Nac. But crowds on both sides, they looked really good. They looked really good for this Battle of the Angelina River.